Welcome once again to the Icons. I'm your host, the sports professor Rick Horrow. This month we're talking about licensing, entrepreneurialism, minor league baseball with the head of Diamond Baseball Holdings, Pat Battle. Let's get started by going inside the Icons. Pat Battle is the son of Bill Battle, who played for Bear Bryant at Alabama and was a head football coach at Tennessee from 1970 to 1976. Bill was the founder of Collegiate Licensing Company, better known as CLC, which built college licensing into a $4.3 billion business over 2 decades by obtaining rights to more than 200 universities, colleges, and bowls. Pat followed in his father's footsteps as CLC president and was the chief of IMG's college division when it was formed in 2007 after acquiring CLC. Pat is now the executive chairman of Diamond Baseball Holdings, which owns 29 minor league baseball teams across the U.S. The organization was formed in 2021 to support, promote, and enhance minor league baseball through professional management, innovation, and investment. What was it like working with your dad and growing up with such intelligence at the Thanksgiving table?
Well, it was intelligence at the dinner table every night. It was, it was just, he's my hero in life and best friend and business mentor and mentor in life. And it was pretty special. He's a special guy and done amazing things in his life and career and continues to do it at 82 next month, 82 years old.
Did he give you a little grief for going to Alabama, or was that the natural situation of a guy who grew up there and saw your dad as a Tennessee coach, but with Alabama roots?
Yeah, he was, Alabama was his alma mater. He was in Coach Bryant's first recruiting class in 1957, I think. And Alabama was always home, but he did make a little detour to Knoxville and became head coach at Tennessee at 28 years old in 1970 and spent 7 years there. And that's where I grew up, in Knoxville, as the son of a football coach. But we moved to Alabama at that point. I went to high school in Alabama, and he reconnected with Coach Bryant, who was his hero in life, and then became very involved later on in the university again.
I can't imagine any other mentors than obviously your dad, but Coach Bear Bryant at the same time as well. It must have been tremendous to be kind of on the sidelines, being an Alabama fan and just soaking it in.
Yeah, it really was. We moved when I was in the 9th grade, moved to Selma, Alabama, where Dad decided to take a few years off before he got back into coaching, which he ultimately never did. He enjoyed the business world so much that he never got back into coaching. But I was able to go with him to Tuscaloosa, go to practices, got to spend some valuable time with Coach Bryant in his later years, and was actually a freshman and sophomore at Alabama during his final 2 seasons as the head coach. So, very a great history at the University of Alabama, and it has continued, and it's amazing to see what Coach Saban has done with the program over his last 14 years.
We got to talk licensing and minor league baseball, and we got to devote the time to it. But one more question. If you were asked for like next year to be a member of the selection committee, I know how politically correct and astute you are. Would you take it?
Absolutely not. That's a thankless. It's a thankless job. At one point, I really would have enjoyed being on that, but because college football is certainly one of my passions. I love the game, and while I am an Alabama fan at heart, through the Collegiate Licensing Company, we represented over 200 colleges and universities, and I'm just a fan of college football and college teams, and I think it's the best sport in the world. And so, to those 13 committee members who sacrifice an unbelievable amount of time during the season, watching film, studying, and making those tough decisions like they had to make yesterday. It's a thankless job, and I admire all of them very much.
Plus, Pat Battle has 3 kids, his lovely wife and grandkids. Want to be able to go out at night, so I'm pretty sure I I get it and I understand. You are, let's call it the amalgamation king. There's better ways to put it, but in a forerunner of the minor league baseball DBH stuff you do now. In the early 80s, you go to Atlanta, you brainstorm with your dad, and your idea was to consolidate and coordinate the college licensing marketplace. You wrap up those 200 university commitments and you form CLC. Was it better and wilder than you even expected when you created the vision?
Yeah, well, it was really my dad's vision in 1981, and he started the company. Really, I won't say by accident, but it really was almost by accident. He was working at that time with Coach Bryant, handling his commercial endorsements. The University of Alabama approached him about beginning their licensing program, and he did. And it was 1983 that we moved the company to Atlanta, representing 9 universities at the time, and it really started from there. That was where it began. I would say the transition, Rick, was, the first 8 or 10 years. It was really more about enforcement. It was just, with universities registering their marks, taking control of their trademarks, and just making sure. It really wasn't until the early 90s that the market for collegiate merchandise started to expand beyond the campus. And it grew from what was $100 million business at retail to what is today a more than $4 billion business at retail. And I do think that consolidating enough universities to create scale to go out and have an impact in dealing with licensees and dealing with retailers was certainly a huge catalyst in achieving that growth. And MLB's objective was really about creating best-in-class facilities across affiliated baseball teams in order to ensure the player development process for the MLB clubs was as good and positive as it could be.
Well, you got it, and your dad got it, and then IMG ultimately got it. They buy 3 large entities at $300 million, including, Host and ISP. And at the end of the day, you talk about the $4 billion deal you have also, but it also generated significant corporate sponsors like Capital One and otherwise. Would you argue that those acquisitions with your vision in was one of the seminal moments in college sports over the last 20, 30 years, would you say?
Well, I don't know about that. Maybe from a business, marketing, and financial standpoint. Obviously the media rights for football and basketball drive the lion's share of revenues in college athletics, and then ticketing and a lot of other things that happen at each campus. But certainly the multimedia rights and the licensing rights were, and continue to be a major source of revenue and brand building in the university community. And in 2007, really the way that it happened, we were not looking to sell CLC in Atlanta. Amazing staff, amazing team, amazing relationships with our university clients, which did number over 200 at that time. But Mark McCormick had passed away in 2005. Teddy Forsman had acquired IMG. And when he looked at IMG in 2006, 2007, he saw that 80% of the IMG business was being conducted outside the U.S., global golf, global tennis, global fashion, and other industries. And Teddy really wanted to strengthen IMG's domestic market. And they zeroed in on the collegiate licensing company, not necessarily because he loved the licensing business, but he liked the fact that we had relationships across 200 colleges and universities, and those were very deep rooted. And then so that acquisition happened, and later that year we acquired Host, and then 3 years later acquired ISP to really bring together IMG College.
Yeah, and IMG College can write its own story. And the back half of this interview is going to write the next part of your story. I remember looking at a Sports Business Journal article basically saying that, we're leaving, but whatever Pat Battle does, he's going to be successful. We don't know what it is. We now know what it is. So obviously you spend time with Silver Lake, they want to acquire IMG as one of their portfolio companies. Define the vision where you said we've got well over 150 minor league baseball teams. We're going to figure out how to consolidate it into a efficient machine that thinks globally and acts locally. When did that come to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, but I think that the one thing I would say before answering that is that there were 7 or 8 years between the time that I left IMG and began to work on various other projects. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and that's really where I wanted to spend my time. Through that process, met Egon Durbin and Greg Mondre, who are the co-CEOs of Silver Lake. Was introduced to them when they were looking to acquire IMG in 2013 and 14, and we really just bonded over a vision of the world and sports, entertainment, media, and where it was going. And so, in that 7 or 8 years, became very involved with Silver Lake and many of their portfolio companies. And I think all of that, combined with, the 25 years that I spent in collegiate licensing, the 4 years at IMG, all of that sort of, really came together to create the opportunity. But the opportunity for minor league baseball, I knew enough about it to be dangerous. I always loved minor league baseball. We tried to hire as many people from minor league baseball as we could at CLC, because people that work in minor league baseball are the unsung heroes in sports. They're not receiving a lot of inbound calls. They have to be very creative and scrappy, and in many cases they're wearing 3 or 4 hats, and they might be selling tickets during the day and pulling tarp at night, and behind the French fry fryer and during the game. And so it's a great it's just America's pastime, and it infiltrates the entire country, and so that's really where it started. And I was reading about Rob Manfred, and who's the commissioner of baseball, obviously, and his team. They were looking to really change the minor league market. This is in 2019, and they ended up taking control over minor league baseball. And MLB's objective was really about creating best-in-class facilities across affiliated baseball teams in order to ensure the player development process for the MLB clubs was as good and positive as it could be. And that was really his goal. And as you can imagine, when you're trying to disrupt something like minor league baseball that at the time had 162 affiliated teams, there was a lot of criticism from minor league baseball owners and politicians. And that was really where the idea came to me, is really from that process. And I felt like, and I had a conversation with Rob about what I felt like that Silver Lake, through its portfolio, could do. When you think about Endeavor and Fanatics and Oakview Group and Learfield and all of the companies that are part of the Silver Lake portfolio, my conversation with Rob was around, we think that professional management matters. We think that best practices matter, and we think that scale matters. And I think that, we believe that if you will give us the ability to do it, that we can help you fill your vision for great facilities, but also elevated fan experience and creating centers of energy in these communities around the country. I mean, that's really that was the vision. And Major League Baseball made it possible for us to acquire the first group of teams, and Silver Lake backed it. Without Rob and without Egon and Greg, we wouldn't be sitting here today. And in many cases, this is where minor league baseball teams exist and thrive. And, they're not in the 30 major markets. They're in the B and C county communities across the country.
When you look at the state of minor league baseball, when you took it, COVID had a lot to do with it, and minor league baseball has always been part of the fabric of Americana. 81% of the U.S. population lives near or around a minor league baseball franchise, which is not to be lost, 40, 50 million people attendance. But in 21, after DBH was formed, your mandate, as you mentioned, was to elevate fan experiences, create centers of energy, fostering dynamic engagement for brands, and highlighting the evolution of minor league baseball environment, a deep-rooted appreciation for traditions, community, and the sport of baseball. My question is a little more complicated. It's in the world of hedge funds and legacy owners and people who worry about the bottom line, as you do, but it's also important to cultivate trust among those in baseball who are giving you the keys to a very large potential legacy. How important was that to you and Rob, and how are you accomplishing that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's something that, from my perspective, was extremely important. And I do think that my background in college, was very important in terms of what we have done and continue to try to do in minor league baseball. I mean, one of the things that I said to Rob early on was that, his team is accustomed to dealing in the 30 major markets with the 30 MLB teams. But from, the CLC days, we understand Norman, Oklahoma, and Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and Ames, Iowa, and really dealing in small towns. And in many cases, this is where minor league baseball teams exist and thrive. And, they're not in the 30 major markets. They're in the B and C county communities across the country. But as we said, they are the centers of energy. And it was very important that, that we hold that trust and that we, be true to our word, that we were there to elevate the fan experience and to improve these communities. And that's what we've done. And I think that, that there are a couple of things, Rick, that have happened. One, very early on in the process, MLB introduced me to Peter Freund, and Peter had become involved in baseball. His family has been a longtime owner of the Yankees. Peter, when he sold his business, bought a couple of minor league baseball teams, and MLB brought Peter in when they were going through this process. They brought him in to be their advisor and kind of their face to the owners of minor league baseball because of how much knowledge and respect that he had within the industry. And so when Peter and I connected early on, it just became a great partnership, and he agreed to come in as the CEO of DBH, and has just done a phenomenal job. And around Peter, we built an incredible team of professionals. It really is about those local markets and creating and making sure that, that those teams in those markets are true to their market.
Many of these owners have owned the teams for a long time. You have a template, but you have diverse opportunities across these markets, history, culture, prior ownership. How do you standardize excellence?
Yeah, another great question. I think, Rick, that, we do think that scale matters, and there are best practices that we can apply, whether it's in ticketing or sponsorship or food and beverage or merchandising or whatever the area might be. We can apply those best practices across all of the teams in the portfolio. And yet, what happens in Portland, Maine is a lot different than what happens in Fresno, California, which is a lot different than what happens in Birmingham, Alabama. And, it really is about those local markets and creating and making sure that, that those teams in those markets are true to their market, because there are nuances in every situation. And we want to highlight and take advantage of those nuances, but also create the best practices that we think we can scale across the entire portfolio.
So I'm going to tape global in our ambitions and hyper local in our approach to my forehead, so I don't ever forget that, because that's a very, very important mantra, especially for you and a lot of you're a national business with local franchises, and I'm not saying you're like McDonald's, but you're retail in your approach and your community benefits too. So that's obviously important. Agree?
Yeah, it is. It is important, and I think the manifestation of that is when you look at the teams, the staff that we have in place in these 26 communities. from a general manager to an assistant general manager to the grounds crew to the ticket sellers, sponsorship sellers. That's the heartbeat of minor league baseball. And, it isn't what happens in the corporate office at DBH. It's what happens, through the staffs in each of these communities and how they're involved, not just in the 70 baseball games that happen from April 1st through mid-September, but they're in these communities 365 days a year and are a very important part of each of these communities.
What's the approach on public-private partnerships and emphasizing the economic development in the region and the investment, assuming public investment's important?
Yeah, important question, and certainly, in 25 of the 26 teams that are owned by DBH today, we have a close working relationship with the local municipality, who in most, if not all cases, own the stadium. It's the local municipality that owns the stadium. Sometimes it's through a public-private partnership, but in most cases, it's the public piece of that. And then DBH, through a lease with the local municipality, operates the stadium 365 days a year. So not only for the 70 baseball games that are played by our teams, the returns that come in terms of community esprit de corps are extremely positive.